Good morning. Welcome to our Neighborhood Housing and Development Subcommittee. Thank you all for joining us on this morning. It's going to be a great meeting today. And we will begin with looking at the April 21st minutes.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. There's information in the packet on a quarterly update, and we do have a consent item today. We have several folks who are available to speak if needed, but it looks like only if needed. So does anyone have any questions on the consent item, or shall we move it as posted?
Move as posted. Move as posted.
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Wonderful. Passes unanimously. We're doing some great historic preservation and housing work, much of it which will benefit District 8. So very excited for me as a councilwoman to be moving forward with both protecting a historic home and revitalizing in Garfield. Next, we have the transit-oriented district policy plans.
Thank you, Councilwoman, members of the subcommittee. This morning we're here for this first item to talk about our walkable urban code plan, our walkable urban plans. These are for the Solano and Uptown transit districts. You'll recall last month you heard our Midtown, our Eastlake, Garfield, as well as the Gateway transit district plans and approved those plans. This is part of our Reinvent Phoenix overall project that we have the $2.9 million grant from HUD to do these policy plan adoptions. And then subsequent to this item, we're going to talk about the walkable urban code as a separate agenda item, and we'll go into some more details on the code in that part. But for right now, I want to introduce Ms. Catherine Coles, who's going to walk us through the policy plan process.
Good morning. So the map before you gives you an idea of the council districts and how they overlay on the district plans. So today we're talking about Uptown and Solano, and Uptown covers District 4, and Solano has a piece of District 5 with Christown and its northern end. So the plans are divided into basically three parts. Today is what's the assessment? What are the current conditions? And there are 6 elements: land use, housing, economic development, mobility, green systems, and health. This is one of the few initiatives in the country that is incorporating a health element, so we're on the forefront with that. Then we have a tomorrow section, which is our vision up to 2040, and this was informed by thousands of participants from the community in many meetings over the last 3 years, and it's a really good read in the document. And then we have the how we get there, and this is where the rubber hits the road, the implementation strategies. The implementation strategies are fairly consistent across all the district plans and then are tweaked for each place where appropriate. So what will the district plans do? They are set to be the policy basis for all of the vision, goals, and infrastructure implementation strategies for property along the light rail system. So the basis here would move forward into changes in how we do things with our investment decisions moving forward. So this is the Uptown area with the darker orange circles being the quarter-mile, 5-minute walk to each rail station, and the lighter color being the half-mile, 10-minute walk. And that kind of boundary then informed how we decided what the boundaries were for the district. This one starts at Indian School and goes up to Missouri, turns the corner over to 15th Avenue. So one of the things we worked on was looking at how we could redo properties that might, in the future, by 2040, fill in for a more transit-oriented development. This is an example of how 7th Avenue and Camelback could develop, where the LA Fitness is and the grocery store. This is an example of what could happen at Central Avenue and Camelback. One of the things envisioned in the plan was for the office building at the corner to convert to residential, and I understand that that is moving forward. In the future, Uptown Plaza could intensify and still have a radius out to the transit station. And then up against single-family neighborhoods on the other side of the street, you can see lower intensities respecting that historic character. Also very important here is our investment in our canal infrastructure. You can see in this proposal here how development could turn itself towards the canal, and this would go dovetail very nicely with our canal improvements we'll be working on here very soon. The Solano District goes from Campbell Avenue up to north of Bethany Home Road, and it has 2 stops, 19th Avenue and Camelback, and the Montebello Station, which is now the end of the line. So we also looked at possibilities for how to fill in the park and ride at Montebello for mixed-use development in the future. And that's something the city would control through an RFP process. And then the other park and ride at 19th Avenue and Camelback, which was, this idea was informed by a very strong immigrant refugee community in terms of community gardens in the center and buildings wrapping up against the street, and then public parking still being provided in parking structures. So the idea ultimately with these plans is for us to end up with a complete street. I know you've heard a lot about that in previous discussions with the Street Transportation Department, but having a place that's walkable with buildings near the street and active spaces. So we're here today to ask for your approval and recommendation on 2 of our plans for Solano and Uptown per the Planning Commission recommendations.
Wonderful, thank you. We have 1 speaker comment card on this item and many in favor, so Suzanne Pfister, if you wanted to. Speaking of innovation and making sure healthcare was included.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm Suzanne Pfister, President and CEO of St. Luke's Health Initiatives. We were contracted with the City of Phoenix to write the health portion of all 5 plans, and we're deeply involved, including the Solano plan. We did an outreach program for the Burmese residents that were in that area. So we did a lot of the outreach, and we are very supportive of these plans, and we hope that you would go ahead. We also are working on our next year's budget and hope to have small implementation grants in all 5 districts to work with the city and the community to help put this into motion. So I'd be glad to answer any questions. Okay.
Thank you so much. We had our first District 8 refugee town hall this weekend with a lot of support from the Burmese community, and they commented that they really appreciate the city has been reaching out and including our refugee community, and that maybe ahead of some of our peer cities in that particular area. So thank you to my council colleagues who also make that a priority. We have a wide variety of stakeholders here in support. Eric Brown, one of our predecessors on the council, Councilman Tripkin, Shannon Scutari, leaders from the development community, including John Kitchell, Beatrice Kitchell, and one of our Garfield and Roosevelt Row leaders, Cindy. So thank you all for your participation and help moving forward in this. Council member questions?
Catherine, on one of your slides, the 19th Avenue and Camelback. That corner number 3, is that 19th Avenue and Camelback?
This is the southwest corner
Okay,
where the park and ride is.
okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to see where the light rail will be going.
Oh, when it goes west?
It's not, well, yeah. I'm just trying, trying to get a visual of what it's going to look like. Due to the fact that right now, Councilman Valenzuela and I are working on an economic development plan of that area, and to from 19th all the way to 43rd. And so I'm trying to get a sense of what is envisioned on that corner, but also further west. So.
When we identified sites for our consultants to work on coming up with concepts for, we identified opportunity sites, and since this is city-owned, it's very much an opportunity site. And keep in mind, this is informed by the vision, and it's a possibility of what could happen, just to give you a visualization.
Thank you.
So, and just to clarify for for you and for the public, for the transportation plan for the route down Camelback, we're still officially studying both the Camelback and the Glendale road alignments. And so and we're also studying mode. And so until we get through those processes, it's a little hard to identify station locations and that kind of thing. So that's a little ways down the road, but ultimately, the form and sort of the way buildings address the street in this area and the density all relate to the fact that it's either, whether it goes down Camelback or goes down Glendale, this is a transit intersection in a big way. So,
What goes down Camelback or Glendale, Rick?
the train, the light rail or whatever mode, you know, if it because the study corridor is Camelback. I think Camelback and Glendale are still options that are on the table as part of the study. Yeah. And so if it doesn't go down Camelback, 19th and Camelback is still a huge light rail corridor, and so that's what I was trying to say.
Madam Chair, may I jump in?
Please.
Yeah, I'm hopeful, and of course it piques my interest anytime we talk about light rail. I think several of us are strong advocates, several of us who are on the council who are strong advocates for light rail, and you know, absolutely supportive of having light rail on Camelback. We worked very hard to extend that study area, and so we'll continue to work down that path. I do appreciate Councilwoman Pastor's comments. That 19th Avenue Camelback area is of interest for both of us, and really for the entire city. It'll benefit all of us to help develop that area. So I'm glad that was mentioned. Christown Mall is one of those it's one of those areas that where I grew up, and this is just really exciting to have a plan like this that's going to help bring that area back. Many of us realize that you know, light rail was kicked off again on 19th Avenue and Bethany going north to Dunlap, and that entire area already, though it's not complete, it'll be complete early next year. That entire area is becoming revitalized and improved, and we have some of our neighborhood leaders that have been engaged, one of which Pam Fitzgerald from the Washington Neighborhood Association. Several others have been engaged in this process. We're very excited to see this moving in this positive direction, and we understand this is still in the planning mode, but we're seeing some good things out of it.
Wonderful, thank you. It is exciting. I think brought together a lot of community stakeholders and continued the excitement for light rail, and we had so much great redevelopment, $7 billion in investment, that this can help us with even more and bring more of that prosperity to more of the community. So thank you so much for your involvement with both of this. With that, do we have a motion?
I move to adopt, and have it right in front of me, the Solano Transit Oriented District Policy Plan and also the Uptown Transit Oriented District Policy Plan. Per the Planning Commission recommendation.
What an excellent motion.
And I second the motion. I would just say, Suzanne, you said thank you. You're so involved in the city on so many major issues,
And thank you for the partnership and for thinking ahead and already thinking about potential grants and all of the other things that help make this partnership what it is. So thank you, and I second the motion.
Wonderful. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Passes unanimously. Thank you to our staff for many years of work on this, and congratulations. Now, I think many of the same folks are involved with our next phase in Reinvent Phoenix, the Walkable Urban Code.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. As you state, this is really the next phase, even though it's kind of on the same agenda as those previous two policy plans. A Walkable Urban Code is a draft text amendment that will go into the zoning ordinance to actually implement the policy plans that are in the adoption process today. And so it is the city's second form-based code modeled after our current downtown code. And the adoption process of it will take place really in two fashions. And so this item that's before you, once approved by the full council, would just put it in the zoning ordinance for someone to apply on their specific property. We will not actually change anyone's zoning as part of this, this current application. We are going to do some further studying over the rest of the summer. We'll come back starting in August, September timeframe, working with individual property owners to actually change their zoning and put the text amendment that finally gets adopted by council on their properties. And so you see in this map here, the dotted lines are where our existing TOD1 and TOD2 areas are, and they were meant to be the interim zoning overlays. So that's where we have overlays around the current stations. We will focus the replacement zoning within those areas, but it's also applicable in the larger colored areas because those are the policy plan areas that are there for the various districts like Eastlake and Garfield, as well as Midtown. Somebody could come in and request to rezone their property to that walkable urban code, and that's the zoning district staff would direct them to use. Our project manager on this project has been Sandra Hoffman. I'm going to introduce her, and she's going to walk us through the rest of this.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, subcommittee members. As Catherine described, the transit district policy plans create the benchmark vision that we want to have for the land within the area around the light rail station. So what the Walkable Urban Code will do, it will create a form-based code that will have transit-oriented, pedestrian-friendly, and a vibrant, engaged environment that matches the Reinvent Phoenix policy plans. Within the transit districts that we're going to have will be 12 different options. We're basically using transit districts 3 through 6, and the intention is to provide a variety of different intensities to be able to address the current entitlements that we have in place, as well as to address the concerns that we've heard from the various neighborhood organizations and others that we've outreached to. We have reached out to a variety of different groups, including having workshops with the Village Planning Committee members, as well as outreaching to business owners and the Historic Preservation Commission and others that are listed on the screen, to solicit their feedback and to incorporate that as best we can in the current draft of the Walkable Urban Code. Through the public hearing process, we've obtained the approval of the 4 village planning committees. The one village planning committee, Central City, did have some recommendations that were different than what the others approved. They recommended reductions in the amount of flexibility that the staff have from 25% to 20%, and only if it's in relation to a public utility conflict. They also eliminated the 15% glazing flexibility, where, again, we have that currently in the draft version of it, and they reduced what the Design Review Committee is able to do. The other 3 village planning committees, Encanto, Alhambra, and Camelback East, all approved the staff position, as well as the Design Standard Committee as well, and the Planning Commission. So what the Walkable Urban Code will do is replicate what we have in the Downtown Code. It establishes the various setbacks or build-to dimensions. It gives a lot coverage. It covers the frontage types that you're allowed to have, as well as the amount of shade that you should have on the sidewalks, as well as landscaping and the allowable uses. So the flexibility that we've incorporated into the draft Walkable Urban Code, basically how it's going to work is this. We typically will have a planner assigned to a project. They will meet with an applicant and tell them that they must meet the conditions and standards of the Walkable Urban Code. If for some reason the applicant can show us that they have an existing real-world challenge that is creating a conflict with what they can do to meet the code, then staff will work with their technical lead as well as the Planning and Development Department management to determine if it's appropriate to give them some flexibility in this situation. We will also have staff document that information in their notes as well as have that on the actual approved site plan. Anybody in the future will be able to open up that approved site plan and see the rationale as to why they didn't meet the strict standards that are in the Walkable Urban Code. The requirement that they have for glazing right now is that you must have 75% of your frontage between 3 feet and 8 feet high for some of the frontage types to be windows. There are situations in the real world that we've encountered through experience with the downtown code that shows that sometimes applicants can't do that. And so we would like that flexibility to be able to work with an applicant in such situations where they have equipment room or perhaps building code requirements or standards that prohibit the ability to have windows across that amount of frontage. So we would like to have that as an option for them to work with us for a small amount of reduction. If an applicant wants more than 25%, they can appeal to the Design Review Committee, and that's a public hearing. So in the current version of the code, the flexibility will not modify any uses, it will not increase any heights, and the Design Review Committee will have to look at the proposals in regards to how is it achieving the vision we have in the Transit District policy plans as well as in the Walkable Urban Code. So they will, again, the applicant will have to verify and show what they're doing to achieve that. If an applicant wants more than 35%, then they're going to have to go through a zoning adjustment hearing and obtain a variance to move forward with their project. So those are the options available. An example that we have is a project, it's Concord East Ridge, and this one was actually approved way back early when we first had the downtown code. And it gave us some lessons that we needed to learn from that, and we heard from a lot of developers after we adopted the downtown code in 2010. And so we modified it in 2012. So right now there is a 25% flexibility currently in the downtown code, form-based code. But this project, as you can see, had a very unique situation. You have some very unusual shaped lots. This one had frontage on 4 streets, and there was overhead power lines with a lot of utility poles along the south property line. So this development had to get 6 variances to be able to move forward for such things as access off one of the pedestrian streets and providing loading for your tenants that live there, as well as reducing your landscaping because of those overhead power lines. So what I'd like to show you is just a summary of how that flexibility would occur. So if we were to look at the 10-foot example at the bottom of the screen, right now staff would have 25% flexibility, which would allow in a 10-foot stretch of area for setback or a sidewalk width, they would only be allowed to modify that up to 30 inches. And again, they'd have to document the real world challenge, why they're giving a break to the developer. If the Design Review Committee were to look at it, they're allowed to give up to 42 inches so that it would be about a 6-foot 6-inch difference than they would have if they were to meet the code. What is recommended by only the Central City Village Planning Committee, as well as some others that we've heard from, is to limit staff's ability to 20% only, and only if it conflicts with utility easement or utility line. And that would only be a difference of about 6 inches between the 25% ability for staff to have 30 inches versus the 24 inches if you had 20% flexibility. So there's just minimal amount of differences between that. And again, the reality is there are things out there that we can't predict when they're doing development, and this gives a little bit of flexibility and assures that a developer is not going to have their project delayed, having to go through an inordinate longer public hearing process. And there is also still a preliminary meeting that we're going to have that allows applicants to have the feedback from the neighborhoods that might want to attend that, or public that want to attend it. So there is an opportunity for the public to be engaged through the review process through that preliminary meeting. So the process that we're going to go forward with is we're hoping to go to the City Council on June the 3rd. And we will have analysis that's going to continue regarding the current entitlements that the properties have that are identified, as Alan mentioned, within the interim TOD areas that were established 12 years ago and only meant to be temporary. as well as feedback from the neighborhood organizations and property owners and businesses. We will then move forward with the full public hearing process that we normally do for a rezoning case and have the full feedback and input that we're going to have to be able to move forward from there to put that walkable urban code within each of the different 5 transit districts. And with that, we request that the subcommittee please recommend to the City Council the approval of the draft walkable urban code per the Planning Commission.
Wonderful, thank you. We have a lot of cards on this particular item, so maybe we can start with the cards. We'll do Tim Sprague, followed by Larry Lazarus.
Good morning. My name is Tim Sprague. I office at 777 Grand Avenue. I'm a developer here in Phoenix, and I will tell you I'm one that have the scars in my back from dealing with infill development and dealing with code provisions that contradict each other. The first phase of our Portland Place project, which we completed in '07, this was before we had the downtown code. We had to obtain 14 variances to get that project done. It was an incredible task. Thankfully, we got it done. What's being proposed here today is something that we need to have in place to make sure that infill development takes place in all the different locations around Phoenix where we can take advantage of the investments that we have. Don't let perfect get in the way of great. What's being proposed is very logical. It makes a lot of sense. It's consistent with what's been happening in our downtown code. I would recommend that it be passed.
Wonderful, thank you, and congratulations on your recent milestone with the project.
For the record, my name is Larry Lazarus. I office at 420 West Roosevelt, Phoenix. I would respectfully request that we speak after members of the Garfield neighborhood have an opportunity to talk about building heights and how they're measured, because it's really they that have the problem, and then I'd like to come up and speak afterwards if it's okay with the chairperson. Thank you.
We have a card from Veronica Lockhart, so maybe that's... Is that, I don't see Veronica.
Excuse me, I'm Veronica. Oh, I didn't see you, I'm sorry.
And Eastlake. Oh. I assume that's...
I'm going to ask Mr. Brewer if he will step up here with me. We're both from Eastlake, so. Before Councilwoman Gallego, and the subcommittee, Mr. Good wanted to say good morning to each and every one of you. He would have been here, but his wife is being dismissed from the hospital, so he's taking care of that. But he wanted to say good morning to each and every one of you, and I'm not going to try to speak as he speaks. There was a situation, and I want to commend before I do that, I want to commend Ms. Hoffman and Mr. Stevens, and anyway, I want to commend you because at the planning committee, you guys made statements, and you made some, how should I say this real nicely? You made some concessions, and we want to thank you very much for that. Also, the verbiage that you used there, you repeated it here. And we at Eastlake want to thank you very much. We want to also let you know that we're going to hold you accountable to what you just said. And that also we are not opposed to the WU code. We just want to make sure, because there was some verbiage used like framework, you know, and things like that. And to me, it kind of means like, well, maybe this isn't all complete. But we want to make sure that everything is done the way it is supposed to be done. I stated before when I was here that I'm a person of excellence, and I want the city of Phoenix to put forth excellence for the rest of for the rest of the United States. But what I want to also explain to each and every one of you is we're not opposed to any developers coming into Eastlake and being a part of the improvements there. We just like respect. We want communication. We want everyone to be on the same page. We want, and we were having difficulties with Mr. Lazarus. We were going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That is not a positive way to do business. So what we want them to understand is there's going to be compromise on both ends. So what you hear here may not be what you might think, sir. And what you say here, we may not understand either. I know my time is up, but I'm still talking anyway. So what I want to say is I don't oppose anything. Mr. Good does not either. We just want to make sure that the height and what is in the WU code is exactly what we can talk about and discuss, and if there is any compromise, that we do it as in business in a professional manner. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Good morning. My name is Charles Brewer. I'm the Secretary for East Lake Park Neighborhood Association. I think one of the major issues that came with our conversation with Mr. Lazarus is the information was not accurate at the East Lake Park Neighborhood Association. I think the clarity coming now was never provided to us. That leads along the same lines as we're talking about, just for your information. We want to give staff the ability to make a percentage variance, but that percentage variance should include input from the neighborhood association before approved. Now, that wasn't what was said, but I want to clarify that. If that's what you meant, then I'm for it. But when you have giving people carte blanche, I don't care about the size, without the input of the residents, there seems to be a problem with that. And that's one of the things that Mr. Good was concerned about, as well as the East Lake Park Neighborhood Association. So if we're going to be intimately involved, as we told Mr. Lazarus, if 100 feet is 100 feet, it's 100 feet. We're not worried about that. But the information that you provide us has to be accurate in order for us to be informed. It caused a lot of consternation with Mr. Lazarus when we were arguing stories versus feet. When Mr. Lazarus was given feet, we were given stories. So we want to make sure that staff is accurate in their presentations to the East Lake Park Neighborhood Association in order that we can make accurate and honest decisions based on the developers' needs within our community. Thank you.
Thank you, and please give Councilman Good and Georgie our best wishes for a speedy recovery, and thank you for sending their greetings.
Very briefly, you can see there was some discussion as to how one measures height, and it was related to a particular site, but I'm not going to talk about that site. I just want to talk about generally how we go about doing this, because the WU code really does talk about footage and not about stories. And the reason that what had happened is, in order to make this explanation easier for the community, people generally think in terms of stories and have a harder time visualizing height. However, stories generally determine intensity of use. The number of stories really translate or determines the leasable square footage in an office building, the number of units that we have in residential development. Footage actually creates and determines the visual height or the massing of a building. If one is trying to achieve the density around light rail stations specifically in order to facilitate a walkable environment, use of mass transit, the limitation of the overuse of the automobile, infill as opposed to continued outgrowth of the community. All those things are the things that we're trying to do here. We want to create the intensity which does translate to height. On the other hand, we also want to avoid incompatibility with the surrounding area when the height is too large, blocking significant view corridors and all of those other things. That has to do, again, with footage. I've given you some examples here of where height really doesn't matter as it relates to floors. I'm not going to go over them, but in some situations you can have 6 floors and it can go at 110 feet. You can have 8 floors at 100 feet, depending upon how it's developed, as it's shown in the Cronkite School of Journalism, a building comparative to 100 feet. We have 3 others that we've submitted to you that we can go over, but I think they understand that now, we understand that, and we're going to work together as time goes on. This disconnect, I think, is now reconnected. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. I think we will have a stronger walkable urban code because we have some real-life examples where we've learned a lot and can move towards that urban shaded Phoenix that we hope to see along the light rail. Next, we have Billy Shields.
Madam Chairman, Council, Billy Shields, 11 West Jefferson. I'm investment partner in the Lower City Center, involved in several projects downtown. I just want to also commend staff. Ms. Hoffman has come to the Phoenix Community Alliance. I think there's been a great effort for outreach here, and I think having developed under the new downtown code and broken ground on a new high-rise, I think what's being done here with the WU code is really commendable. I would speak in favor of Mr. Lazarus' position in terms of height, and height is height, and we shouldn't be determining stories. But I also want to speak in terms of this, in favor of this, as written by staff. I do not want to see staff's flexibility diminished at all. You cannot anticipate what a development is going to have to be, what it's going to have to look like, and honestly, I would, as someone in development, approve more flexibility in staff on the other side. And so I really don't want that diminished from the original recommendation, and those are my comments, and thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Mike McQuaid, or, no, I'm sorry, that was item 9, I apologize. Reed Butler.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Reed Butler, 42 West Mariposa Street, Phoenix. My wife, Sean, and I think we live closest to a platform of anybody in the city of Phoenix. You've heard me say that before, with the exception maybe of Councilman Good, who also lives very close to a platform in Eastlake. But I'm here today on behalf of the Arizona Multi-Housing Association. I'm on the board of the association. I'm the chair, co-chair of our developer committee, along with Brian Kearney. Many of you know Brian. And I'm here to speak in support of the code, but also in support of the flexibility that's been built into the code for staff. We've met several times with staff, Alan, Cindy Stotler, to go over these kind of issues. And a couple of other speakers have mentioned these urban sites are always irregularly shaped. You take them as you find them. Again, our members are the developers working on many of these sites that you're familiar with in the central corridor and along light rail. We're bringing the density to the stations. We're very happy to do that. But the sites are always different than what you might find, especially if you're doing suburban development. So as we innovate and explore densities, actually a project I'm aware of, wood frame as high as 100 units per acre is one I've heard about recently. So we're trying to push the density and bring the residents near the stations, and that requires a certain level of flexibility. So our association would be supportive of the code as drafted with flexibility to staff. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you. I believe that is all the cards I have marked to speak. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak on this agenda item? We have many cards not wishing to speak, but anyone else who wanted to speak on this agenda item? So we have a variety of stakeholders marked in favor. Leatrice Kitchell, Shannon Scutari, Lorenzo Perez, John Kitchell, Dan Clockey, Don Kuth, Eric Brown. So thank you all for being willing to come down here and participate in this important discussion. And now we will turn to council member questions.
I would like to continue this item. There's a lot of, I would like to speak to some neighborhood groups that have contacted me over the weekend and understand some of the dynamics that is happening with the WU code.
So, okay. Would that pose a problem for staff?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, that would not pose a problem.
Okay. Would, I think it was odd to have a debate where there was one stakeholder with a strong opinion who didn't speak, and so it did feel like we heard very strongly on one side and no one spoke on sort of, so maybe that will allow us to.
I just need more time to understand the pieces that they sent me over the weekend. And I had this conversation very late at night on Saturday. And so due to my crazy schedule, I was not able to gather the group together to understand the dynamics.
Wonderful. Do you have a motion?
I move to continue. I move to continue this item.
I'll second.
All in favor, please?
Can I just make
Of
a
course.
comment, though, too? And I know that there's a debate going on as whether or not there should be more stringent standards or less stringent or keep it the way it is right now. And I thought it was brought up very clearly in the city council meeting today, the subcommittee, of the different dynamics that are occurring in a central core. It's not just in the city of Phoenix, it's happening all across the country. That when you live in a central core, you're in a central core, you have unique issues that require flexibility. You take the flexibility away, you're really going to limit the ability to do or get anything else done. And I know that there's a debate going on right now as to whether or not staff should have any flexibility. I think that's a wrong approach. I think it comes from a lot of people that want to tell others what to do, but they also don't live in the real world. The real world shows you that every piece of property may look the same, but it has unique qualities and unique issues that are different to that. So what you have, sometimes you'll have a property that may be right next door, but may have an easement running right through the middle of it, which prevents any of these really good ideas to be completed on there. It just won't happen. So regardless of where we go in the future, and I know there's a debate on the council since I come from more of a market-driven side of this because the markets make those determinations of where things go. But I also come from the other side where I think it's up to the individuals to make their own free will decisions for their own districts. I would recommend, as we're moving forward on this, we take a look at maybe doing a pilot. We did that with the adaptive reuse before we moved into something this big, this drastic into some areas. I mean, the staff recommendations are good, but then if there are going to be limitations, then let each council member make the determination whether or not they want to be part of that pilot or not. One of the other things you can include in there is anything that includes a city subsidy, that would be a part of that pilot as well. So then you start differentiating different types of properties that are out there too. So you make people make their own decisions of what they want for their own. I would never allow in my own district the type of restrictions that I'm hearing to occur. It would literally drive business out of my district. And I think that would be just a bad move for my district. But I'm also a market-driven rather than a government-driven guy. I think individuals have a right to make their own decisions for their own properties. So as we move forward, as this is continued, at the very least, and this is just an idea since we can't talk about it individually, I think people ought to look at what they want to do in their own areas and then leave it at that. But again, this doesn't really impact my district because we don't have light rail there. So my district's one of those payors, it doesn't get any of the benefit from it. But at the end of the day, individuals have a right to make their own determination, and we'll go from there. Thanks.
Thank you. And I would just say that I have heard from many people in the development community that they want this, that along the light rail they want a unique product where there's several different uses in one area and that this brings things that they do like. So we will, I think, given the motion, not have a full debate today, but I do think that we have heard from many stakeholders that they're really excited about the potential here.
It's not this. This is fine because what this does is allows a consolidation of a lot of the work that's already done in the downtown. I'm talking about the ideas that we're kind of hinting around on of making it more restrictive rather than less and creating less flexibility for people to be able to look at the uniqueness of each property. My position would always be toward the flexibility side because I think that's where markets go. But at the end of the day, if people are looking for more restrictive, they ought to be making that decision for themselves rather than others.
Great. With that,
Matt, I'm supportive of the continuance, and I think this is about bringing everyone to the table. I guess when you think about who's being restricted, it depends on who you are. And it's okay to have community leaders come in with the developer, and that's the type of that's been led, or I'm sorry, lots of success has been realized in District 5 in the last few years, 4 years, 3.5 years, because of that approach. It is a district that absolutely welcomes light rail. In fact, the extension happening now is in District 5. There is hopes of having more extensions throughout District 5. It's one of those districts that contribute to the overall economic growth of the city because of an openness to what I believe is the single most important economic development catalyst, which is light rail. And so the overall item itself is important. I love that we're talking about it. I love that we're preparing for it. We realize that light rail is such a major catalyst that we need to be prepared as all of these transit-oriented development opportunities are coming about. And now it's just talking about how we flesh through that. So, you know, the motion was made to continue, and I support it. I guess we could just move on from there.
Wonderful. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That passes. This will be continued to our next meeting. We do appreciate all the people who came out today and participated in this. It seems like we have strong enthusiasm for urban development along the light rail, and we look forward to continuing this very important conversation. Councilwoman.
So this item then will come through the subcommittee, and the next opportunity then will be on the July 2nd City Council, or is July 1st? July 1st.
Correct. July 1st for the full city council. We'll come back to the subcommittee in June.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Item number 9 is the phase out of the men's overflow shelter and transition plans.
Hi, Penny.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, thank you so much. I want to thank our partners that are here today, United Way, Arizona Department of Housing, the Maricopa County, and our police department. We're here to update you on how 5 community agency partners have come together to try to deal with a backlog of approximately 500 homeless individuals who have been sleeping on concrete and asphalt for coming on 7 years. When we started out, this was an as-needed response to heat-related deaths in '06. The men's overflow shelter then became a permanent shelter, and then the adjacent east parking lot became part of the services that really did not have any kind of an exit strategy for people that are homeless. Spurred on by an urgency to close the men's overflow shelter due to structural issues, we 5 agencies began to meet together and try to address the situation. We now have a plan. That plan is an attachment to your report. I want to say that while we've been able to produce that plan now, it's not been easy. It's been a very long, difficult road. We've had to implement strategies as we're developing new ones. We've literally had to build a plane while we were flying it. The issues are very multifaceted, very complex, a lot of difficult funding decisions as well. Going to be describing a lot of different areas, and so I wanted to show you this aerial, and you have a blown-up version there at the end of your presentation, the hard copy that you have. The green area here at the top is the men's overflow shelter building. Adjacent to it in blue is the east lot, the parking lot that has been utilized. The red area is the many acres of the Human Services campus. You have CAS in yellow, the largest shelter in the state. I've also labeled the Lodestar Day Resource Center and St. Vincent de Paul buildings. We'll be talking about them as we move through this presentation, as well as an outdoor area that's in between those 2 buildings. The plan that is attached to your report is 3-fold in terms of short, mid, and long-term strategies that we are developing. We did start out with the closure of the men's overflow shelter as the primary. We quickly realized that that is just the tip of the iceberg, the beginning of a lot of things that need to be changed. We created a plan to step down the men's overflow shelter from 250 to 220 to 230, et cetera, down till finally closing it out. As we have done that, we have tried to keep housing first, and housing strategy is the number one thing that we really want to do for people. We want to end their homelessness, not just manage it, and that's what we've tried to do all along the way. We are engaging people while we still maintain some sense of safety, of course, and their dignity to the highest degree possible given the resources that we have. And of course, we're trying to minimize the impact to the neighborhoods. We have in fact closed the overflow shelter. It closed on March 31st, 2014. Since then, we have been working diligently to find another alternative for the east parking lot. It is just a parking lot with asphalt. We, on May the 15th, made that transition utilizing the LDRC, Lodestar Day Resource Center, and St. Vincent de Paul buildings to house people under roof or shelter them under roof. And then we have the area, the grassy area that's in between the two buildings to have people stay there as well. Last week we were able to put a canopy over that, so now it's a shaded area in between the two buildings as well. We also have, to the generosity of United Way, been able to provide funding for UMOM, who runs the Watkins Shelter for single women and families. They are now they're going to be able to increase by 25 women, so we'll be able to move 25 women into the Watkins building as well. The community outreach engagement, we are really meeting with the community a lot. Last week, as an example, I met with Parks and Police and all the neighborhood leaders around Hans Park. A few miles away, another staff member was meeting with other community groups that had asked for information on what we've been doing. The Friday before that, several of the partners were with homeless individuals that have been staying at the MOS in the parking lot, letting them know the plans that we had coming to move indoors, as well as to get their feeling about everything that's been going on. The other thing we've been trying to do, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, is really pay attention to the whole regional effort that's been going on. There's a coordinated entry and assessment that's been happening. Again, due to the funding of United Way, we have been able to increase the Welcome Center hours to be able to engage and assess folks from now 5 in the morning till 9 at night. So we have much more capacity to deal with that. So that is a really good thing that we've been able to do. As we move to the mid-term strategies, this is very exciting. When we first started working on this, we tried to redirect any funding that we did have towards this effort. As just a couple of examples, the City of Phoenix was able to take some of the HUD funding that we had, some caseworkers, and go out to CAS and help them with their rapid rehousing efforts. Through that effort, we were able to house 40 more additional folks. The county, Maricopa County, and Department of Economic Security redirected some funding so that they were able to create a request for a proposal that was eventually awarded to Community Bridges. Through that, we started to house folks, and we're housed from October when the contract was awarded till approximately mid-November. We were able to house another 48 individuals. And then we were able to make presentations with the leadership of the United Way to both the City of Phoenix and the Maricopa County Industrial Development Boards. We secured $1 million in funding from each board, along with $500,000 from United Way Philanthropy. We now have $2.5 million to put to rapid rehousing to be able to house an additional number of folks. With permanent supportive housing, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, and all the council and the mayor, we want to thank you so much for your leadership in prioritizing 275 vouchers to chronically homeless some months ago. When you made that decision, you also made it very clear that we needed to have the supportive services wrapped around those individuals, because without that, they cannot be successful in housing. I'm so glad to be able to tell you that we've had a lot of success in that area. Immediately following your vote, United Way put $250,000 towards the development of the supportive services that are needed to begin to utilize the vouchers. That has resulted in a contract with Circle the City, and in partnership with the LDRC, they will begin to house the most medically needy of that population. We also have developed a really extraordinary partnership and collaboration that we are about to enter into formally with the State Behavioral Health Authority, which is the Mercy Maricopa Integrated Care. They are the state mental health agency. They have funding to put towards the medical needs of this population to wrap around the services on the medical side. The United Way has brought the funding to the table to deal with any non-medical supportive services that are needed, such as utility deposits, furniture to move in, et cetera. So we now have all the supportive funding, both on the medical and the non-medical side, to deal with the vouchers. So we thank you very much for making that even possible. We continue to monitor all of these different projects that I'm describing. We have reports that will be looked at and discussed and analyzed by the funders that we have at the table. As far as the long term, it is very clear that without all of us at the table, we could not even be where we are, but we also know that this is only the beginning. This is really a long haul. There is so much work to be done to make sure that we don't end up in the kind of situation that we've had to date. So we, as funders, meet every single Monday morning. We discuss all the issues. The Human Services Department meets with police and streets and public works to talk about where we are on a weekly basis. And we know that without all of that, we can't have the collective impact that we've been having. We've also are standardizing all the interventions to the Continuum of Care Board, approved standards of excellence. Those are common items around definition, service criteria, performance measures. All of this standardization will go a long way in helping reduce the stay that we have and the turn the beds over faster so that we can move people through the system much faster. And of course, we continue to use data. One of the things that was interesting at the East parking lot is we did not even know who was in there. We had all kinds of myths about who was there. With funding with the United Way, we were able to start to assess and engage that community, and we were able to find out what we needed to know to make better decisions. As the slide says, the parking lot is not a home. Just to summarize, we have increased the indoor overflow capacity. We're moving towards a more coordinated service-enriched model, where I described the LDRC and the St. Vincent de Paul buildings being used, and we now have professional staff that are there, along with the off-duty police entity that we've had in the past to make sure that there's a safe environment. We've expanded the coordinated entry assessment, as I indicated, expanding the hours from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. And all of the strategies that I indicated to you, all of the funding, that can house over 620 individuals. And of course, we continue to develop all the longer-term solutions as a total funders collaborative. So, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I really want to end with this thought. This is a 62-year-old gentleman that was homeless for 15 years. The last 2 years in and out of the CAS shelter, the MOS, and the parking lot. We rapidly rehoused him as part of the original county contract with Community Bridges back in November of 2014. He is still housed. His medical needs are that he could not address are now being addressed. He sees his doctors regularly, gets the necessary medication, gets the oxygen that he needs. He now has Social Security disability income, and his total quote was, "I am very grateful to be housed. I love where I live. I could not take care of my medical needs staying in the MOS. I thought I was going to die, and now I have hope." So, Madam Chair, that concludes the presentation. We're here to answer any questions or listen to any comments you may have for us.
Wonderful. Thank you for your hard work on this. It is nice to have so many stakeholders come together. It is not an easy problem to solve, but certainly with partnerships, we are more likely to do it. Councilwoman Pastor wanted me to let everyone know that she was able to see this presentation at Public Safety Subcommittee, and so she thanks you for your work in that area, but needed to leave early. And certainly we did appreciate this at Public Safety, and I got the opportunity to ask about some questions about summer heat, which is coming up soon, and I think of grave concern to all of us. It is dangerous in the summer, and I'm glad that we are preparing ahead and we'll have some good indoor opportunities. When we spoke about supportive services, mental health and physical health definitely has to come first if people are going to succeed in housing. But this group also works a lot with neighborhoods, and as people who maybe haven't had a stable housing situation in a while go back into neighborhoods, could you speak about some of the services to make sure that they know sort of what neighborhoods expect and how are likely to succeed in that area?
When the individual that's going to be housed is going through the process in terms of eligibility, the paperwork, those kinds of things that have to be completed, there is an orientation, and part of that orientation is about being a neighbor, being a good neighbor, the kinds of things that it takes to live out in the community and those kinds of things. We certainly have a good relationship, Human Services Department certainly does, and Housing Department with neighborhood services, where we're able to bring different education and resources to help that if we see a need and or if it's identified. So that's basically how we deal with it up front in an orientation, with trying to help individuals understand what it means to now have a place and what it means to be in a neighborhood and how to be a good neighbor.
Wonderful. And then could you speak with the $2.5 million in partnerships with IDAs and Valley of the Sun United Way? Thank you. Sort of the geography of the housing solutions that might be available to individuals for rapid rehousing and sort of where they are and.
Yes, well, right now, in terms of that whole thing, that pot of money, Councilwoman, we've been able to put out an RFP. We looked at all those proposals last Friday. We are now, United Way's leadership, they are meeting with the entities to try to solidify who will be using for that rapid rehousing in those contracts. They will be scattered site. They will be all over the region. It depends on where we're going to be using Home Inc. I believe that's okay to say. We'll be using Home Inc. to locate the housing and work with owners across the region. So it'll be in many different places. It's not in one place.
Wonderful. So throughout Maricopa County, it
Yes.
would not just be.
Yes, Councilwoman.
In Phoenix. I think people are more likely to succeed if they have family and can go to places where their networks are. And I know we serve many people who come from throughout many geographies, not just Phoenix.
Yes, and it really is a choice. They're involved in where, if you will. And so, of course, they have to be available, but there is a discussion and a choice, if you will, and decision-making that has to go on at the beginning up front of that process.
And you said we've gotten a lot of great data about who we are serving on the campuses. Would you mind sharing a little bit more of that?
Well, what I meant by that, Councilwoman Gallego and the rest of the subcommittee, is that there were all kinds of myths about who was in the parking lot, as an example, who's there, they're all this or they're all that. What we have found is that we had engaged almost all of them. They'd been through our system in one way or another. We found that their needs very much replicated the needs that we have seen nationally and locally, that about 20% of them we probably could have engaged if we'd had a diversion program ready for that. 60% of them are scoring in the rapid rehousing, and another 20% in the permanent supportive housing. That's how we developed the strategies that you've heard us talk about. That's how we went after the kinds of funding that we've been able to secure based upon that kind of a spread. So we now know we have them all in the HMIS system. We're using different tools to make sure that we know who they are, where they are, and who is touching them, including the police department and the use of outreach teams. We've started to begin to train them in the use of HomeLink so that they can know that this person has been engaged before, or how many times they've been engaged, what kinds of things are going on with them. So we have various tools that are helping us in that arena.
And we have some housing solutions that are gender specific, so women could go to a facility at UMOM. Could you help us understand how much of the population is in couples so that we can, as the housing committee, just think about appropriate?
I know that since we've, Madam Chair, member subcommittee, I know that since we have started the transition to the under roof, if you will, on last Friday on the 15th, there's been an average of 72 women that have been sleeping in the shelter area. So we know that's the number of women. I don't recall off the top of my head the number of couples, although we have that information as well that I could provide to you if you wish.
Wonderful. We just have heard from some advocates that is an area where they would love to see us focus some more.
Yeah, so we'll have the 25 beds at Watkins. That is going to be an improvement, as well as the rapid rehousing dollars that are geared towards the whole population, men and women and couples alike.
Wonderful. Do we have any data on how many of these folks it's hard, many people have been in many different locations, but are tied to Phoenix as a city and sort of their primary residence the last time they were in stable?
No, not specifically, and not there may have been information at the very beginning when we first touched them, but since they've been, sheltered in this manner for a long time now, I don't have that readily available. It's something we could maybe look at if the data will tell us that from the beginning when we first encountered them.
Wonderful. I think Phoenix has done a lot in this particular area, and I suspect many of us may want to ask our other jurisdictions to help more. And I think the more data we can have to show that we are providing services for a region and not just people from Phoenix, I think that will be valuable for us in making the case that more jurisdictions should partner with us.
Yes, and we appreciate that offer. That's wonderful. We can certainly pull all the data that we can from various sources in terms of street count data, the information that we have now of this population. We can put something together to help guide that discussion and guide that visit, if you will. That would be wonderful if we had the support of council to do such a thing.
Wonderful. We, at the Public Safety Subcommittee, spoke about, we had neighborhoods in the area who are very, so I understand there's disagreement, but I feel are very heavily impacted by some of these transitions. And they were unable to receive block watch funding. And so I would love it. This is a committee that does a lot of work with community development block grants. And maybe we can look creatively to see if we can prioritize more funding to help those neighborhoods, because they had asked for, they felt that their garbages were being used heavily by people who had to leave the campus during the day, and that there were some security risks and people entering into vacant homes, and they had asked us as a city to think creatively about how we could give more resources to our neighborhoods and be good partners as they are impacted by this.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we've been working with Public Works and the Streets Department in the immediate area around the Human Services campus with regards to garbage pickups, containers, those kinds of things, sidewalks, street lighting, et cetera. So we continue to work on that. They will be in our weekly meetings to see what we can do from that perspective. In partnering with the police department, and we're trying to coordinate, we're going to be coordinating the outreach teams to be more mobilized to try to address, as far as other funding sources, be glad to, talk to any neighborhood associations, talk to them about what might be available, the funds that come through neighborhood services as well.
Wonderful. And I think this committee's work on abandoned buildings could be very helpful if we can get those abandoned buildings occupied again, back in circulation. That removes the possibility of people moving into an abandoned building and creating more work for our law enforcement and the neighborhoods. So I think we've tried to look at this problem from many different angles, and that program has gone into operation now. So hopefully that will be helpful as well, but we ought to think creatively and be great partners to our neighborhoods. I believe they provide a service to the rest of the community, and we should be as good a partners as we can to the people who live near this area. So, let's see. And we did, I apologize, we should have taken it earlier, but we did have a few cards. Councilman Tripkin was very supportive of this and had to leave, and we have Mike McQuaid marked in favor and available to speak. And thank you for your continued advocacy in these areas.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the council. I'd like to just speak for a minute about my feelings as a citizen, not as the board president of the Human Services Campus, Inc., or not as on the board of the Lodestar Day Resource Center, because as most of you know, I'm very supportive of this transition, and I'm very involved in this activity. And when I look around the room and see Sheila and Dee Dee and some of the others that have been at this for a long, long time, I've never felt better about where we are as a community. I really say that. To see these individuals in front of you working together, shoulder to shoulder, and this isn't just in the last few weeks, this has gone on for months, and in some cases we're meeting almost daily. And it's unprecedented in our community to see the state, the county, the city, the police, the United Way, private and public, coming together to address a serious need of our community. And they've done an incredible job. I just can't tell you how grateful I am and how gratifying it is to see it for me personally. And The one thing I think we'll see in another 6 months, this transition is only for a 6-month period of time, but fortunately is during the critical hot months of the year. We'll have everybody inside, or the ability to come inside, or at least on our lawn, with food, shelter, housing resources, engagement, and that's the big change. Rather than having just containment and security be the main thing about this 400 or 500 people, it's now going to be assessment and engagement and housing people, because that's what ends somebody's homelessness, is housing them. And so I think we'll see in the next 6 months a dramatic shift in the neighborhood. I think we'll see many, many fewer people in the neighborhood of the Capitol Mall area, around the campus. We've already seen that in just a few short, days. We opened on Friday night. Our numbers have dropped dramatically because a lot of the people that were in that parking lot were there for the wrong reasons. They were there for criminal intent. They were there to promote criminal activities. And now that we have everybody inside, safe and secure, they're not going to be able to do their business. And most of those people were not homeless, so they didn't just wander into the neighborhood. And if they do, I was talking to Commander Alexander before the meeting, we've already planned for an engagement team with police to go out where we do see pockets or we do see people going to the neighborhood and really engage them, assess them, and get them onto the campus to receive services. So again, I'm very supportive, I'm very thankful, and I appreciate all that the subcommittee has done. Ed Zerker, Tom Manos, the leadership at the county and city, Mike Traylor, have just done a phenomenal job to bring this together. So thank you very much.
Hey, could I make a comment? And I didn't put a card in, I apologize. Just quickly, Reed Butler, 42 West Mariposa Street, Phoenix, Arizona. So I met Mike back in 1999 when we were building legacy bungalows. I think many of you know we're the largest apartment owner in the Capitol Mall, and we're looking to do more projects in the Capitol Mall and Grand Avenue. And I don't think we could thank Mike enough for, of course, what he's been doing going way back. It's really been remarkable. But I want to echo what Mike said about the responsiveness from the leadership at the table, in particular, city staff and city PD. So we're a property owner. We have people living in the Capitol Mall. We've been there for 17 years. What matters is responsiveness. So whenever we have any kind of concerns or issues, PD and others from the city are out right away. And so I'm really here to say thank you for that. And I would hope that over the next few years we could see more private investment in the Capitol Mall to help support the public investment that's been taking place in the Capitol Mall. Thank you very much, really, everyone, for your leadership.
Thank you. Council member questions?
Good job. Yeah. Just a comment. Clearly, all of the efforts are truly life-saving efforts. These are life-saving, life-changing, life-saving efforts, and the fact that you are being so responsive, because we all know that the Arizona summer heat can be deadly, and literally you're saving lives by coming together and helping these individuals out. So I echo all of the good things that were said about our staff, our city staff, and the partnership with the county, and of course United Way and several other partners that have come together for this. It's all good stuff.
Wonderful. Thank you for that presentation. We move on to item 10, future agenda items. Sounds like we already have a busy meeting at the next month. Call to the public. I do not believe I have any cards from the public. We do have a card from. Please.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gallego and committee members. My name is Nancy Miller. I live at 3205 East Desert Cove in Phoenix, and I'm a concerned neighbor. And mobilizing our neighbors that several weeks ago, or months ago, a developer we feel is misusing the PUD process for the city to build a 5-story apartment house 10 feet from the sidewalk in an entirely 1-story neighborhood at the base of Paestawa Peak in the 32nd Street corridor in Shea. And we feel that this violates the Phoenix General Plan. It violates 3 different studies done by the Urban Land Institute, the 32nd Street Corridor Committee and an ASU study that no rezoning happen in the 32nd Street corridor north of Shea. The developer has made 0 concessions over 4 different months, and we would just like this committee to perhaps look at that issue a little bit more, why a PUD can come in and say none of the zoning laws in the city of Phoenix apply to one particular project. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think staff is available to touch base with you on that particular issue. With that, we are adjourned.